Welcome to Tanesia's Locks, Beauty Tips and Potpourri. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to have you all here. You can look out for videos every Wednesday and Sunday. So have your notification bells turned on and also just come to the channel on those days so that you can get your fresh content. Sometimes Sunday's videos will be placed on the channel on Saturday. Let's go ahead and dig in today. We are getting ready to talk about fine, low density hair. This will be one in a series of 2 videos. Look for the next video to come out in about 3 weeks, all right? This is a very important topic for a lot of people because not everybody has medium and high density hair, which means your hair will most definitely look different. And this video is designed to give you some tips about some things you might want to consider. Before we dig into today's content for the video, I did want to take a few moments to share with you one of the many visual successes that the I Am Melanin Magic hair brand is having. The Magical Hair Growth Serum has been very successful in helping people to restore hair in areas that have long been bald or that have been very difficult to remediate. This client, as you will see, as you continue to watch, has been using the product for 2 months, and in the 2-month period has experienced some major changes. So we celebrate these changes, and over the next several videos, I'll be able to share with you more and more of the pictures that many of you out there on this beautiful channel, on this blessed channel, have been so gracious and kind to share with me over the last almost 1.5 to 2 years. I'm organizing the files now and really making an effort to show more of the success that the products are having now. This is the Magical Hair Growth Serum being used consecutive days, I believe from Wednesday to Saturday or Sunday. And this has been a very hard to treat area for this client. So hopefully you enjoy taking a look at the before and after. We've had various other successes with male patterned hair baldness. Again, the results do vary from person to person. I'm hoping that you will stay tuned for the release of the Magical Hair Growth Serum Accelerator. The group that is participating in the trials, hopefully, I'm giving a shout out to all of you women, will receive your samples within the next 6 weeks. I'm very excited about this particular product because it's entirely different, but hopefully it will be just as effective, or it will pick up where the other serum leaves off. It is definitely worth a try. We're getting some amazing results. I love you guys and thank you for all your support. The I Am Melanin Magic brand salutes your support. I am Melanin Magic, and so are you. First tip I want to give you is patience. That's the one thing I want you to remember. When you have low density hair, your best friend is going to be patience throughout the journey, because as you move further throughout the journey, you're going to find that your hair is going to have a more voluminous, thicker look if you're doing the right things to it, if you have figured out what your unique hair care needs are, and if you have a loctician that is mindful of the differences between low density hair and medium and high density hair and the different needs and requirements. So the most important thing is to be very patient, and as I mentioned before, judge your journey as an individual and not so much based on what other people may be experiencing on their particular journey, okay? With patience, you'll be surprised at how far you can come along this journey and how the rewards of just giving your hair time to do what it's going to do can make you feel happy and pleased with your hair. Your hair can look like it has never looked before, especially if you're new in your journey and you come into it and after you get your retightnings, you have that plucked chicken look. And you can see scalpiness all over the place, and that lasts for, like, let's say almost the whole first year, and then your hair starts to fill in. It starts to get healthier. You're making sure that you are using low manipulation strategies and a litany of other things to help your hair. You're gonna be so grateful at the end of the day. Okay, the second thing that I want to talk about has to do with avoiding doing some of the things that we can sometimes do when we don't like to see the plucked chicken look or the scalpiness. Even people with high density hair and medium density hair sometimes do this at certain stages during their sister lock or micro lock journey, so that they don't have to see the scalpiness, or they can feel more comfortable with the way their hair looks. And one of those things may be wearing a hat. If you're someone with low density hair, fine hair, soft hair, very thin hair, you need to avoid wearing hats and caps on a regular basis, and as much as possible, really, because they create friction. They put your hair through quite a bit of stress. Another thing that people tend to do to avoid certain aspects of the journey when they have thin hair or low density hair, and actually will just do this on a regular basis until maybe the hair starts to fill out, is they may put extensions on the hair. When you have low density hair, when your hair is very fine, this is something you want to be particularly careful about doing for a number of reasons, because it can be really easy for someone to convince you to put extensions in your hair, or it can be really easy to kind of lean into doing that as an option, and a whole lot of things can happen. For example, it creates a lot more weight on your hair, and if the part that's being added to your hair is a lot thicker, or it's weightier, which it most certainly is likely to be, that's going to create an extra heaviness and weightiness to your hair that over the long term can create breakage. And then also the way the hair is actually added to your hair. Everybody doesn't know how to do it correctly. I had a client who buys the I Am Melanin Magic Oil from the website to get in touch with me some weeks ago, and her particular loctician sewed the hair in. That may not be the best way to add extensions. And then you have other situations, and I've heard about this on more than one occasion, where infected hair, or hair that may have had some fungal material on it or some type of bacteria on it that was active, was then placed in a client's hair, and all of the hair in that particular area fell out. And you all may have heard about that. Oftentimes the hair that you may get from a facility or a salon, if the person is not really careful, that hair could have been lying around. It could have picked up any number of microbiomes. And when that is placed in your hair, which is a living organism, and the moisture is very supportive of the growth of fungus and microbiomes and things of that nature, bacteria, it can spread like wildfire, and in no time people have been known to lose all of their hair. So do what you can to avoid things that may be counterproductive as you try to hide the thinning. Do your best to just try and hang in there and be more patient, especially if it's an alternative that comes with some risk, because it can actually undermine the very thing that you're trying to do, which is to grow your hair out, to give it the appearance of more density and volume. The third thing that you're going to want to be mindful of is just your expectation level. Keep in mind that the longer that you're on the journey, the more that your locks will become fuller and swell as the journey goes on. The other thing in alignment with that same statement is you want to, as you go further in the journey, you're going to find, it took my locks 5 years to actually mature and to compress. Sister locks tend to be a little flatter. You can see the braided pattern, and they condense like this, and it looks tighter and a little bit thinner than it initially did. But my locks were like a lion's mane initially, and when I washed them, even now they will still swell some. And I've had locks for over 13 years, or I think if I were to sit down and actually try to backtrack, 13 years will be coming up sometime in July, but I'm not 100% sure. But I can tell you that if you have a lock pattern that is too tight, then as your locks mature and they condense, that may be something you want to reconsider. It may be important for you, if you're new to the journey, to have that talk with your loctician prior to the install, or if you're well into your journey, to ask the loctician what do they think would happen to your hair if they were to implement or to shift you over or transition you to a looser lock pattern, perhaps like maybe a 3, or if you're in a reverse 4, if you happen to have sister locks, definitely getting out of a reverse 4, because that's going to be your tightest pattern. Next thing that I want to talk about is using clarifying shampoos. I've used a clarifying shampoo probably 6 to 8 times over the time that I've had my sister locks, and I love the feeling that it gives. I just don't do it that often. I love the feeling that it gives my hair because it strips everything out and it's squeaky clean, and suddenly the hair feels lighter. All right, similar to what you get when you do an apple cider vinegar rinse. I did that on my channel. You can go back and search the videos. But one thing, as I said, is it strips the hair. So it can make the hair feel drier. It can make the hair feel like it's easier to tangle. It makes it a little rougher to the touch. And you may find that you have more friction and your hair is not as soft and pliable. So if you happen to do a clarifying shampoo to cleanse your hair, be sure to go in and also to restore the support that your hair needs and to baby it a little more. And for someone with fine, low density hair, I would recommend that you just not get in the habit of doing a lot of clarifying shampoos on your hair in the first place. Because everybody's hair is different, if you're someone that uses oil on your hair, and you know I support the use of oil, and so many locticians do. My loctician was a natural hair care stylist, a cosmetologist when I met her and when she installed my locks. And the first thing she did was oil my hair down on the first day of the install. And at that time, I was still a part of the Sisterlocks Mafia as a beginner and as a newbie. And I remember thinking and asking, is it really okay for you to put oil on my hair? Because I read all this stuff. And she was like, yeah. She was like, I know what I'm doing with natural hair, and our hair needs oil. And I'm so glad she made that decision, because quite honestly, my hair needed oil before I got the locks. And clearly it would have needed oil after I got the locks. And I see so many people who believe that our hair does not need oil, and that's very counter to what we know about our hair as people. And my belief is that over time, that excessive dryness, especially because the natural oils have a more difficult time of moving through our coils and our kinkiness, the beautiful kink in our hair and our coils. And because of that and so many other reasons, just the variation in hair porosity and what your hair needs and so many other things, you can be surviving the first 2 or 3 years. But once you start the regular regimen of these at-risk rituals like these retightnings and doing some of this other stuff, you're going to find over time your hair is going to be dry. And if you deny your hair what it needs after repeated shampoos, after being in contact with the elements, after, washing in the shower with the chlorine in our water, the fluoride and all of this other stuff that's not good for our hair, if you listen to that, down the line, it's likely that you're going to regret that you didn't. And many people, as I said, support this. Even you may want to look at Melissa Blake's. I've been looking into her work a lot, and I'm hoping to be able to speak with her. But her knotted locks, she departed from the Sisterlocks, and she believes in water and oil every day, just like I do. Just like I do. Our hair needs it. Our hair needs to be healthy. And you as an individual lock wearer and an active participant in your own lock journey, and ultimately, unfortunately, for some people, an active participant in your own rescue, you're going to find that your hair is going to thrive so much better when you give your hair what it naturally loves and when you give your hair what it naturally wants. And you don't have to get permission from someone who's standing over your hair and sometimes can feel a little territorial or feel like they're in charge. You don't have to get permission from them to give your hair what it needs, because I can promise you, if you happen to be so unfortunate as to suffer the consequences of not giving your hair what it needs and providing it with the additive, nutritive support that it's going to need as you continue to endure what this style entails, when something happens to your hair or you have the misfortune of losing hair or locks dropping or breakage or thinning, that person is going to have a lot less to say at that time than they did when they were bickering with you about the oil or getting on you about the oil. So please, please, please remember that. But I bring up the oil thing because people with fine, low density hair may find that the products that they may decide to use in their hair are too heavy. It's important to really use something very light. And it's also important to use it sparingly. Say, for example, you use the I Am Melanin Magic oil. I always say that oil is in a spray bottle and a little bit goes a long way anyway. But there's no reason to oversaturate the hair. A little goes a long way. The most important thing is to spray it in the scalp and to massage the area very gently, or to place it on your fingertips if you have low density hair, and to massage it throughout your hair. And if you're putting the oil on the actual locks, then you just want to make sure that you are putting it in your hands first and then running your hands through your tresses so as to make sure that you equitably apply the oil through your hair, and that you don't saturate a particular area and then it becomes limp. All right, because as we know, with fine low density hair, that makes a difference. The next thing I want to talk about is when you really feel like you want more volume, especially after retightening, when you feel like you have that plucked chicken look, or you're going through that first year before your locks begin to you feel like a human being and they start looking like they got some sense. You feel a little self-conscious, because of the flatness of it and the scalpiness of the locks. It's important to try different styling methods. Now, remember, we want to kind of err on the side of caution with regard to over manipulation, because that's going to be one thing if you have fine and thinning hair that you want to avoid at all costs. You want to minimize manipulation, and you want to make sure that you de-intensify manipulation, which means you have to pay attention to the tension and the pressure that you put on your hair when you're styling it. But braid outs, twist outs, bantu knots, pipe cleaners, and a host of other styles can give you a sense of added volume and thickness. And these can all help you to get through that difficult period as you wait for your hair to do what it is inevitably going to do, which is to swell into something absolutely beautiful. The last thing that I want to talk about in this part 1 video is considering your retightening needs. As I mentioned before, I'm going to do a part 2 video, so be on the lookout for the part 2 video. Retightening can vary when you have low density hair. This is the opinion of some people. Now, this can be a controversial subject, and I believe in the coming decade it's going to become even more controversial, because you guys know when it comes to retightening, I will tell you again and again and again and again, and some of you may hear me, but you may not hear me, or you may hear me, but you may not listen. Okay, or you can be listening and not really hear me. And when I say hear me but not listen, you may not take my advice. I am one that believes, I've had these locks. Granted, my I Am Melanin Magic oil has helped me to get through countless dyeing and picking my locks, and I've had some lock trauma during the course of this 13 years, but it's been minimized because of the way I treat my hair and the products that I use on my hair. And you can get the I Am Melanin Magic Premium Hair Oil on the site. You can also find that other one, the Magical Hair Growth Serum, if you're already experiencing some thinness, or you want to see if you can't regrow hair in areas that may have actually been there, but because you lost the hair, it looks thinner than it actually is. The retightening schedule is critical, because I'm one that believes you are going to be better off if you wait longer in between retightenings. Now, of course, there are conditions that relate to that. And one of them is the way your hair is communicating with you. This is a unique hair care journey. You cannot ever allow someone to apply a blanket solution to your hair and tell you that this is the way you have to do it because of A, B, C, D, and E. It's not a good idea. You've got to look at your hair. You've got to communicate with your babies. You've got to communicate with the soul of your hair, because our hair can be oppressed by some of the things that we do with it, and it will act out, and you will experience breaking. You will experience more fragile hair. You will experience thinning, and those retightenings are the main culprit. I will stand on that, y'all, until the cows come home, and I hope that I can say it enough over and over and over that some of you will begin to realize that if you're 3-4 years into the journey and you're having hair thinning that you didn't have before, or your hair hasn't begun to thicken up the way you thought that it would, or appear more voluminous and have more density, then your retightenings if you don't have any, barring, hormonal issues and other things that people have convinced us very conveniently are the problem, as they send you to a trichologist or a dermatologist and no one ever says anything about the retightenings, I am here to tell you that when you get the retightenings too frequently, you're going to have problems. And the more that you can spread them out without jeopardizing the health of your hair, the better. Some of you that have fine, low density hair may even want to consider shifting your Sisterlocks over to knotted locks. I'm just going to be honest with you. I am actually considering that, and I don't have any thinning. But I'm looking at the pros and cons of it long term. At the very least, I want to find out as much about it as I possibly can, because it's a viable alternative. And a lot of what Ms. Blake says makes a whole lot of sense. The fact that the grid is problematic, the fact that it interrupts the natural pattern of the hair and the natural course and movement of the hair, the fact that the retightenings really only need to be done 4 times a year. You all have heard me say I typically would go 11 to 12 weeks, which is about the same. And this is something that people who have knotted locks do on a regular basis. And I'm a believer in that. And it's only been more recently that I said, let me try 8, 9 weeks, because I'm getting a little older and maybe I should try something differently. But the more and more I think about it, the more and more I say, you know what you've been doing has been working. So for those of you who are going every 4 weeks, it may be working for you now. You're going every 5 weeks. It may be working for you now. And it's easy, when I say hair loss is insidious, it's easy to think that your hair is doing great. And trust me, by the time you realize it's not, it's already breaking. And it's already spreading, perhaps, and unfortunately, systemically throughout your hair. So when you're going that often, y'all, the hair doesn't have a chance to recover. It doesn't have a chance to rejuvenate itself. It puts extra stress on the follicles. Now, let's say in the best case scenario, you were getting your hair retightened every 6 weeks, which is not the worst thing, but who's retightening it? And are they very gentle? Because if you were to retighten one of your locks and you were paying attention to what you need and what you like to feel, which is no pain, you would know that you don't have to feel any pain. You don't even need to feel any soreness. No soreness and no pain at all after retie. So if your hair is being retightened on a regular basis, and it's being retightened too frequently, you got a problem. And then on top of that, if it's being retightened and the tension is too much, it's being retightened too tight to your scalp, and you have any pain or soreness at all, I'm going to say it's something you need to consider. Because I know when I do my own retightenings, I already know what it feels like, because I've done my own retightenings before, and you don't have to feel any soreness at all. And if you have a loctician that is a little heavy-handed, just continue to remind her, and also remind her not to tighten too tight to the scalp. So some people will say, okay, they're going in every 4 to 5 weeks. Even when you have thin hair, I think that can be problematic. It may not be problematic in the short term, but the long term, it will be problematic, and it will eventually cause your hair to fall and too thin, and you will not be a happy camper, all right? Now, on average, most people that have fine, low density hair are going 6 to 8 weeks. That can seem reasonable. Some people can go a little longer. However long you decide to wait, make sure that in between and at regular intervals, you are checking your hair and you are making sure that your hair is not tangled. Oftentimes that requires that you put something on your hair, namely oil, that will help reduce the friction, give your hair more pliability. You all have seen me do videos where I've separated tangled hair and I've sprayed the oil on it prior to separating it, and when I need to pull it apart, it either comes right apart, or when I pull it, the hair is pliable and it slides right out of the other lock, rather than popping out, or rather than me having to pull it out. So it takes patience, it can take oil, and it can take you taking a more investigative look at what it is that your particular hair needs. I hope you enjoyed this video. After I finally publish the other one, I will put the link to that video at the end of this video. I love you guys. I appreciate you. And I love to hear your comments. If you have fine, low density hair, please place your information in the comments and sound off. Let me know what some of your experiences are. Let me know what some of your troubles are. And if you're having thinning around the edges in the crown, you need to hop on that right away, especially if it wasn't a pre-existing problem. And even if it was a pre-existing problem, doesn't mean that it has to be a long-term issue for you necessarily, depending upon the level of damage that you may have. You're with Tanisha Ali of Butterfly Transformations. Is my spiritual channel. This is Tanisha's Locks. If you haven't purchased my book on Amazon, make sure you get it. It's called Manifesting Your Masterpiece. I'm sending you love and appreciation and tons of gratitude. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you have low density hair, Microlocks, whether they be Sisterlocks, knotted locks, or any other type of small lock, Goldie locks, can be one of the best decisions that you've ever made. If you find the right loctician and if you are careful to make sure that you do the things that will actually support your hair. Welcome to Tanisha's Locks, Beauty Tips, and Potpourri, the channel where we get it all in. You can also learn more about the I Am Melanin Magic brand. Thank you for stopping by. Experience the I Am Melanin Magic difference by going to our website, www.IamMelaninMagic.com, and purchasing your products today. I Am Melanin Magic, and so are you. I Am Melanin Magic's fragrance bombs are explosive. Get your charcoal. Make sure you heat it on a heat source long enough so that the charcoal turns gray on all 4 sides before you place any of the incense, bahor, or unsi on top of the charcoal. Take a small piece, if not the entire ball, take a small piece of your fragrance bomb. And as you break off that small piece, place it on the gray charcoal and enjoy the concentrated aromatics, fragrances, and natural ingredients. Our fragrance bombs are the bomb. Use in a ventilated area and use when you need fragrance all over your space. Feminize and romanticize. I Am Melanin Magic. Hello, and welcome to Tanisha's Locks, Beauty Tips, and Potpourri. I hope that this message is finding any of you that are watching it in a peaceful place, in a productive place, that you feel as though you're living positively in your passion and in your power, most definitely on purpose. It is Wednesday evening, all of you beautiful butterflies, and we are digging back into that hair thing by Mrs. Joanne Cornwell. So if you want to stick around while we explore the next chapter, which I believe is chapter 4, based upon where we stopped last week. Yes, this chapter is called The Conspiracy of Silence, and it's quite a long chapter, so I'm going to break it into 2 parts. Don't forget to, right now, while you are sitting here looking at this video and looking at me and valuing the content here on the channel, if you're going to stick around and watch the video, please do your part and give back by giving the video a thumbs up. You can also share the video and you can comment. I would love for you to comment. And what I would like for you to comment on are either of these things, either of these questions. The first being, what meanings are assigned to naturally textured hair? And we're talking about the meanings today that you think still exist that are assigned to naturally textured hair as it relates to people of the African diaspora, in particular people in America. The other question I want to ask you is, because this is a very, very interesting chapter, where did these meanings come from? And what is it about these meanings that continue to make our hair a topic of a closed topic for discussion now? I don't feel that that is as pertinent as it was back when she wrote this book in the late 90s, because we have ushered in a different aspect of hair evolution and personal senses of identity. But we do still have pockets of people in our community who suffer from an identity crisis when it comes to their hair and don't even know why, don't know where it comes from, and don't associate it with anything that is lacking within them at a deeper level in a conscious way, and don't understand that subconsciously that is impacting them in their life in a very meaningful way. So again, the questions would be, what are the meanings that are assigned to natural hair? Where did they come from? And what is it about these meanings that make hair such a closed topic in our community? And I guess what she's saying is there were times in previous decades, and perhaps even now, but I definitely don't think to the same extent, if it exists, where we didn't really talk about hair. We didn't talk about the fact that our hair was naturally textured rather than straight, and you know, that there were certain things that we ran into as a result of that. We tended to be handicapped by something that was so beautiful in our hair, in our not claiming it. We tended to be almost weighed down and burdened, or as she mentions in this chapter, as Alice Walker referred to in one of her poems or in a statement, that our hair was oppressed. And when you think about that, that's a really deep statement. Our hair was actually oppressed, and our hair was oppressed because there were times where we had to erase certain aspects of our unique culture. But then there became a time where, and we had to do that for survival, but then there became a time where we took up the banner and we wore that torch and we erased those aspects of our cultural identity by choice, not even understanding where it came from and that it was a problem. So let's say the first people that began to do that did it as a matter of survival. And as the generations went on and as time went on, those people who took that banner up began to see straightness, for example. Let's say if you were getting a perm, as that was the only option that you had. And to do anything less was, oh my God, like, you're gonna wear your hair like that? You're gonna do what? What do you mean you're not gonna get another relaxer? Or what are you gonna do with your hair? You're not coming anywhere with me, that sort of thing. And so we began to become separated from a very important part of our identity. And I don't know how many people really understand what that did to us as a people in terms of being able to claim or to reclaim our identity, or to stand in who we are without feeling some sort of inferiority, because that's how that came about. Is you have to erase your culture as a necessity, as a financial, socioeconomic necessity, and then you get into a place where what it is that you embrace as the alternative becomes something better than what you actually are in a natural way. And so you begin to then ascribe to, or to assimilate in your beauty standards, and in many other ways, because if you're doing it in your beauty standards, you're also going to be doing it in other ways, even if you don't realize it. But you begin to assimilate to the so-called dominant culture, and your beauty standards become warped, and they become very much separated from the reality of who you actually are. And in your separating that, there's also some other ethnic cleansing that occurs that you might not even realize. And I think that's a very thought-provoking topic to get into, because when you begin to do that and you assume the position, then the first thing you go to is the standard of beauty that you've been given, which means anything that is of you that is not naturally the standard of beauty in someone else's eyes has to be changed. So over time, you no longer accept the most intimate part of yourself as anything that's worthy. So you literally become confused. You become, how you feeling, Miss Sophia? Confused. You literally become confused, and it's important to understand what that does to the psyche and how that's just one of the many ways that African people or people of the African diaspora, in particular African Americans or Black people, have been stripped of something that if you don't recognize what that being stripped of that something, not just this beauty standard business we're talking about or our hair, if you don't realize how that plays out, you may not understand any of the pandemonium and the dysfunction and the crazation that's going on out here today with Black people. You won't understand where it comes from. And there's all sorts of cultural practices and ways of being and behaviors and things that have visited transgenerational trauma on us as a people. And oftentimes, if you don't sit down and think about where this stuff comes from, or if you don't look into it, or you don't have an inquiring mind, you may never understand where some of this stuff comes from. The most basic of things. Some of the relationships that mothers and daughters have, some of the ways that parents may talk to their children when they're in stores. Mothers may talk to their children when they're in stores, the way that African-American children don't grow up with the sense of entitlement and the same level of confidence in some instances as our white counterparts because of the ways that we were reared, which were a function of survival, which were inherited. So even if you weren't living at that time, you inherited something, not just in habitual practice and genetics, but your very DNA, the energy of your experience, your collective experience is mired in all of this stuff. So I digress, but this chapter is very interesting, and I just kind of want to, remember I said that I was going to paraphrase because I cannot read directly from the book. But this chapter is really about how the hair thing, which is the name of the book, that hair thing brings up serious self-identity issues. And I guess when you look back to where you were before you decided to get locks, go back 5 years, go back 10 years, and ask yourself, how did I really feel about natural hair? What is it that caused me to choose the Sisterlocks instead of going with traditional locks or freeform locks? Ask yourself and continue to go back and ask why, and see if you can't get at perhaps whether or not at any point in time you were either worried about what your own people would think, your own family. You may have been worried about how you would be perceived maybe in the workplace, or you yourself did not quite feel comfortable with your quote-unquote Blackness at that particular time. So she talks about this lack of meaningful communication around things that are different in our society. Now, we know that we have been the trailblazers and the pioneers for bringing discussions to the table around meaningful cultural and social differences, and we have done that. We have begun that process, and we have been the trailblazers and spearheaded discussions, and in some cases we have just outright decided to dispense with trying to be like other people and to reclaim the beauty of who we actually are. And I love this because she says something in this chapter, and I'm gonna go ahead just a bit, where she talks about why we had many people who had bought into the straight hair myth. We had another faction of women and men also who had not brought into and were not interested in the black hair myth. And the words that we might would use, kinky, as she mentioned, nappy, fuzzy, excessively curly, or get this one, can't you comb me type hair, was insufficient for qualifying and describing the beauty, the lushness, and the versatility of the quality of hair that is ours, that is natural. And I said that in one of my last video on my hair journey. I probably should, it was really a socio-political discussion in a sense, very lightly. I probably should have changed the title because it could be misleading, but it does talk about my overall journey. And I remember in that video making reference to this aspect of myself that I claimed as my locks began to change. And somehow naively, initially going in, I thought they were going to look like they did during the first few months. And as they began to change and they began to look more like this, naturally here now they are compressed. They have compressed, so they look a little bit different. But before they were compressing, but you could still see the fuzziness and all of that. I remember thinking, oh my gosh, these look like locks, like, ooh, like locks, like, ooh, I don't know if I like the way these look. But at the same time, that's what my hair was doing. But there was something about that was new to me, and there was something about that I didn't quite like. So when I go back and I dig and I look into that and I ask myself very honest questions, and I say to myself, well, what was that about? Was that because I was used to seeing myself look a certain way? Was it because I was worried about what other people would think? Or was it because I didn't like the naturalness of my hair? Now, before I got the Sisterlocks, my hair was growing in a natural style. I was doing the twist, and I actually loved the way my hair looked. But it has been an evolution, because I'll tell you this, the person that I am today, that I've embraced more of as a result of the hair journey. And I'm not talking about an identity crisis at that level, because I didn't grow up with an identity. I grew up with parents who were part of Black Power movement. And I can get into that all day long. So I was a rebel, especially in college and in my 30s. Thank goodness I had to remove myself from some of the I digress. So it wasn't an identity thing, but there was something that was going on there, because as I evolved based on who I am today, had I never had the benefit of getting these locks, I'd probably have an afro out to here. I'd be wearing my natural hair, just based on the sheer number of women that I see out here looking so beautiful in our glory, and that sort of synthesis and that evolution that has taken place in me over time, where I see me differently, I see us differently, and I've always gazed upon our beauty. I've always felt that our beauty, I'm sorry, was superior. We represent all races. You can find people that look like the Asians within us. You can find people that look like Caucasian within us, feature-wise. We have such a wide range that it's like a one-stop shop. You can get anything in the African diaspora, but it's something even more depthful, more essential, and more, I don't even know what the word is. It's basic, it's instinctual. It is the very essence of a thing at its smallest level, at the quantum level, I'm going to say, that is so amazing. And taking this hair care journey, or getting the Sisterlocks installed, moved me more and more into who I really am, which I didn't realize I was escaping as long as I was putting those perms in. As long as the box braids weren't a big deal. But when I was doing the hair weaves and I was buying other people's hair to put in my hair to look a certain way, even though I might have had shoulder length hair, but I didn't see it that way at the time. But now I can't envision ever doing that ever again, at least where I am now, unless there were some medical reason for it. I know that I would always be looking for what ways can I exploit my natural hair? What else can I do to accentuate my natural beauty and the beauty of these locks, which is our natural beauty. So I found that discussion very interesting, and she goes back to Western regions of Africa to study and to bring awareness to the fact of how hair was not only seen as an adornment, to try and contrast this secrecy around the issues of hair and this lack of wanting to identify with your naturally textured hair. She wants to give a contrast, and she goes back to the motherland to look at the way that hair was, oh my gosh, didn't just carry a superficial meaning. It was an aspect of your adornment that carried meanings with regard to marriage, meanings with regard to your socioeconomic status, cultural traditions, rituals, coming of age ceremonies, and so forth and so on. that promoted self-expression, but also group expression. So in addition to some of these pictures here, she talked about, for example, your hair might be an expression of your spirituality, your political orientation, whether or not you were married, and even your marital standard. And in fact, there were certain hairstyles in certain cultural regions that you could not even wear until you became a certain age. So at age 7 to 10, for example, you had access to these particular hairstyles. And then when you came of age from 11 to maybe 17, you had access to another group of hairstyles. So I found that very, very interesting. But again, it is this need to reclaim your hair, and allowing your hair to be a unique expression of who you are, and a way that you can construct meaningful statements about who you are in the world, and your own individuality. So I thought that was very interesting. I really love this. It's a longer chapter, but I do want to read this part here. It says, how did the ways of making statements with our hair in our original cultures, positive statements about ourselves and our world, get reduced to one really crass, brutalizing message? A message that was actually imprinted on our cultural psyche, and believe it or not, still remains today. You have women today who see this more as a hairstyle when they may look at us and not associate this with the fact that, by and large, although this is a hairstyle, I tend to feel like it's a political statement. Whether you realize it or not, it says I love me. It says this is what my hair does, without resorting to your chemicals or what you feel styling standards are, and so forth and so on. That the kink in my hair is absolutely beautiful, and that the kink in my hair gives me a beauty edge, because the kink in my hair allows me to do anything I want to do with my hair, whether I want to straighten it, whether I want to wear it braided, cornrow, plaited, sister locked, traditionally locked, freeform locked, and whatever the other millions of different styles are that we have for our hair. I thought that was a very interesting statement, because she says, quotations, quote, our hair type is a visible indication that we are inferior beings. That is what was printed on our psyche. So we had this shame around our hair. We had this shame around what was going to happen if you jumped into the pool. I think you probably seen a few movies. There was a movie, I think, with maybe Sanaa Lathan and the chick who was in, I can't mean to say the chick, but the lady who was in A Thin Line Between Love and Hate, that Martin Lawrence ran in, was in the movie with, I can't think of her name. One of my favorite actresses, though. But I think there was a movie she was in, and she played Sanaa Lathan's mother, and Sanaa revisited some of the trauma that she had growing up, because she wanted to swim, and I think either she jumped into the pool and her mother snatched her up out of the pool because her hair was starting to draw up. It was just a spectacle around that was just unreal. And I think a lot of us, if you can't identify with it at that extreme, you may be able to identify with it at other levels, worrying about your hair and what was it going to do if it rained or if it became humid, as if the fact that your hair was just going to revert back to its home place or its default was so god awful. So, you know, that lets you know how that message was bred into our psyche and was actually revisited again and again and again as a form of a transgenerational trauma. And that's what I'm calling it. But it just reemphasizes the fact that reemphasizes the fact that there were no positive references to our hair anywhere in the literature, anywhere, and that we were stripped of that, and then we were made to feel our hair was a source of shame. And then we revisited that same trauma on one another, and many women today, as I go back to and tie that point in, don't realize that some of what they're doing with their hair has to do with them running away from who they really are. Now, it'd be a different story if I decided to cut this off tomorrow or pin it up and put on a wig because I want to look a certain way. You can put art on your face, you can put on wigs, you can put a weave in, you can do all of those things, but are you doing it as a form of unique expression, or are you doing it to run away from your natural hair? I think that there's a difference between those of us who do it as a form of art in the same way we may wear a different color lipstick, and those of us who do it to hide who we are, or do it to run away from who we are, or do it because we don't want to deal with ourselves. It's similar to saying, I'm not going to date this group of people. I don't like them. This is where I want to go. That's the same as you saying, I don't want to deal with my hair. It doesn't want to do what I ask it to do. I don't like it. Let me just go put this wig and cover myself up. That's a problem. That's a problem. And that is one of the reasons why, for me, with this journey, when you get the Sisterlocks or the Microlocks or whatever else, I think it's therapeutic to go through each stage without embellishing. I think that if your hair looks a certain way, and this is just my personal view, and you don't have to agree with me, but I think there's benefit in not doing any extensions and not doing any of that, and letting your hair look like it looks, which will make you feel uncomfortable, which will give you a greater degree of opportunity, or open up a segue for you to claim more of who you are. When my hair started doing all this crazy stuff and I didn't like the way it looked, I could have been, it wasn't just outside, because most of the time I wore my hair covered back then. It was when I would take my scarf off and I would look, and I didn't like the way it looked. But in my not liking the way it looked, I didn't like me. I didn't like me. And that's what I had to grow to realize, and that's what I grew to understand, that there were aspects of me that the hair was just a cover for, that I needed to address. But then there were also aspects of me and my hair that I needed to address, that were a part of me, my blackness, and my naturally textured hair, that I needed to grow to love again. Because after years of perming, and having straight hair, I didn't know how to look at myself with kinky hair. So these are all very important things, and I love this chapter here. I think it's a very, very good chapter. And she's asking another question: what do you think things were like before Black women's hair got oppressed? And when you think about oppressed, what does black hair being oppressed mean to you? Put it in the comments. What does black hair being oppressed mean to you? Because think about it. The hair is oppressed when it can't express itself, when your kinks have to be straightened out and braided back and hidden under a wig or chemical relaxers or whatever it is that you may be doing. Your hair is not just, it's physically stressed. It's mentally stressed in a sense, because you are. It's emotionally stressed, but the hair in and of itself is being oppressed because it is not being allowed to curl, to kink, to do all the things that your hair should be free to do, even grow in the direction that it wants to grow in, because you are busy building a flower bed and putting a barrier up and pulling this and pulling that and trying to get this straight and putting you know how we do when we were trying to push back nature and vegetation, we do all this stuff. We put fertilizers down, we put weed killers down. We go in and we pull weeds, we trim with the weed trimmers. We want the edges straight. We don't just let nature do what nature is supposed to do. And in doing those things, we prevent some things. We hurt some aspects of the environment. We poison the soil. We kill the animals because we're trying to get rid of pests. So that part of the earth is somehow being held captive. So your hair has been oppressed. If you haven't come out from under some of this crisis of self-identity, and you have to ask yourself, what is it that I need to do to get closer to who I am? Or what is it that I need to really consider in asking myself, do I have some aspect of an identity crisis? And if I do, where does that come from? When did it begin? And how can I slowly begin to come out of that to embrace more of myself? Because while this was written, I think in 96 or 97, I don't think for one second that it doesn't have some applicability today, because we still live in a society where, although the media is shifting somewhat and we have our own channels of cultural channels and so forth and so on, and we see more people of color in the media, you are still, and I love it when I see sisters with their braids and their natural hairstyles on these media channels, on these smaller channels. People are walking out into the world being just who they want to be. And I believe that is what has allowed more people, even doctors, white and black and any other color, to begin to wear their cultural stuff and to be who they want to be in the workplace. And now people tend to more or less go into their professional spaces with a greater degree of individual expression than was before. And I think that, like many things that we have been pioneers in, we by and large initiated and were the catalyst of that personal ability to have that freedom to express oneself. And so we need to reclaim more of that, and we need to be able to understand when we're in spaces where we don't really have that this is something to be beautiful, to be proud of, because it is so beautiful. And you have such privilege as a woman of African descent. You are so beautiful. You are so rich. You are so freaking amazing. And no one has to understand that more than you do. And in fact, you are the most desired woman on the planet. And if you don't realize that, then you have a problem, and you are looking at what society is feeding you instead of the truth. So this is just amazing. It's beautiful. But I loved this chapter. She's going to go into, and what I'm going to go into in the next aspect is a bit of history to put this negative transformation into context. So she's going to go back some, and she's going to give us where this history of this inability to be empowered by our physicalness or our physicality, where this actually came from. And I think that the social pressure and maybe certain aspects of legislation and so forth, and its discussion within the context of the effect that this has had on African American women will be very interesting as she deals with some of those past wounds and exploring at this particular time when she was writing the book, I think in 96 or 97, what was actually still present. But the part that we need to take responsibility for is the part that we revisit on our brothers and sisters. And I know that's none of us. Any of us who I'm preaching to the choir who watching this video probably can't relate, because we're not in that space anymore. That's why I'm asking you to go back 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. Go back even to when you were a child. I remember my mom combing our hair and plaiting our hair. I also remember getting it washed, blow dried, and pressed on the weekends. Not every weekend, but on the weekends. I also remember getting relaxers very early on. And when I didn't get the relaxer, at one point I remember getting a Jerry curl. And then when that did what it was going to do, I think I then transitioned to something else that was natural to try to straighten the hair. But after a certain age, it was like you couldn't do the plaits anymore. You had to have something to make the hair lay down. I just remember after that period of beginning to get perms, I continued to have perm after perm after perm after perm, and then went through that space where I began to wear braids, and I began to put the extensions in and do the box braids. And then after that, I began to do the weaves, and weaves, and I would vacillate back and forth from the weaves to the braided styles. And then eventually I would let my hair grow out again, but then I would go back to the perm. And it wasn't until having the perm and doing the henna and the color and all of my hair came out that I decided to return to my roots. But it happened not by choice. It happened as a response to hair trauma, but it turned out to be the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me in terms of my outward expression. I believe I'm far more beautiful now than I ever was physically because of my hair, not because of the way it looks, but because of what it says about me and the pride that I carry with me with my Sisterlocks. It's a statement that I'm making that feels good all the way to the core. I don't just love me, I love all of me. And this actually is me. And this is the most natural and essential aspect of who I am. So I'm grateful for Sisterlocks. I'm grateful for Microlocks. I'm grateful that those people that came before us, that were the trailblazers, that brought this to us, including Mrs. Joanne Cornwell, were a part of a movement that gave birth to something today that I wear as a banner of pride, and as many of you do as well. So that part of the history is very important. So we will finish the next part of this next time around. I've loved having you with me today, and I can't wait to see you again next time. For those of you all who are watching this, don't forget to share, like, and to subscribe. And don't forget to go on over to IamMelaninMagic.com and get your beautiful, beautiful, beautiful hair oil that will strengthen your hair, or your magical hair growth serum that will fill in those spots where your hair is struggling. Remember, this is not for the hair, it's only for the scalp. This can be on your scalp and your hair. And it is antifungal, antibacterial. It's a detangler and so many other things. Again, you can find the information for that in the description. I love you guys. Thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for everything that you do for the channel. I love your comments. Please share some of your comments in the comment section for the video regarding this particular discussion that we had. Share anything that you find meaningful. It can be a reaction. It can be an answer to any of those questions. It may be something else entirely. But I do appreciate you, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Continue to be peaceful, productive, prosperous, living passionately and in your power. I'll see you again soon. Hey ladies, do you love the way your skin looks and feels? I know I do, because I am using the I Am Melanin Magic Anti-Aging Serum. And at 50, I love the way my skin looks and feels. This blend is bomb. It renews, revitalizes, rejuvenates, soothes, conditions, moisturizes, tones, brightens, and fades all in one step. So if you're ready to get your glow on, go get you some I Am Melanin Magic Anti-Aging Serum.
If you struggle with acne during your youth or even as an adult, it's time to give I Am Melanin Magic Acne Serum a try. Unlike other harsh products that dry out your skin, our oils balance and purify, helping to heal inflammation. All natural and formulated to meet the requirements of melanated skin. You'll see results in no time. Don't delay. Order yours today.
Do you have dark spots from skin irritation? How about unsightly marks from acne that's lasted way too long? Fade Magic can help you find your way back to radiance over time. Don't delay, order yours today.
If you are not using Melanin Magic hair oil, then what are you using?
Hi, I'm the creator of the I Am Melanin Magic Skin and Hair Care brand. The I Am Melanin Magic Hair Oil is our premium product. It is the leading high-end supplement for your mane.
It reduces breakage and promotes growth and can be used on all hair types and looks, from straightened hair and microlocks to wigs and protective styles.
It's antifungal, antibacterial, and it's anti-funk, so you know you're protected.
It softens and conditions your hair, and it's anti-frizz too.
Hey guys, so I started using this oil called I Am Melanin Magic since February of this year, and check out the new growth. Like, it's insane. Not only did it help with my new growth, but it smells amazing too.
See the dramatic improvements Denisha has made after not having hair around her edges for 3 years.
Tanya's hair had been like this for almost 20 years, and while getting injections. Her doctor said it was scarred and would never grow back. After 4 weeks of using I Am Melanin Magic, this is what she looked like. I Am Melanin Magic did this to Danette's hair after a short time. This is really all your hair needs. It's rich with antioxidants, loaded with growth-promoting ingredients. Look at the growth of my hair. It's amazing. The product speaks for itself. Order yours today and don't delay. Don't delay. Purchase yours today.
I Am Melanin Magic, and so are you.